The good news is there's enough information and there's enough combinations with genotypes that the rabbit genes can be mixed up, and it only takes one change to get a different color. It's basically light patterns and darker patterns, and it's really a combination of just 4 colors: black, blue, chocolate, and lilac. And everything through mutations gets changed. All these genotypes, just like we talked about before, have dominant and recessive genes. There's different gene sets in that, and the A locus, the B locus, C locus, D locus, E locus. Locus stands for location of basically what the fur is doing, it's changing. If recessive genes match up, like our Vienna gene, that was how we got our blue-eyed rabbit. Our white rabbits, a lot of our customers didn't like the red eye, so we found a rabbit that had the Vienna gene, bred that rabbit, had a litter, took that litter, bred it back to the grandparents, and we had our line of blue-eyed rabbits. Now, if you're interested in this, I'll link 2 books down below that have so much information, and a lot of it at first will make your head spin, but I promise if you consume as much as you can of it, eventually it'll come into focus and you're gonna have that aha moment. Okay, so we'll do A for Ugudi. Ugudi is dominant, so we're gonna give it a capital A. And solid black is lowercase a. So they have the same alleles. We all have 2 alleles, and one's going to be dominant and one's going to be recessive. In this hypothetical case, mom and dad have the same alleles, but they're not related. So how is that going to play out in this Punnett square? So we're going to drop moms down. We'll have moms be red. So how the Punnett square works is we got mom's alleles up top, and they're dropping down into these boxes. So one allele will stay on the right side, the other allele will stay on the left. Then we have dad's alleles over here, and we're putting dad's alleles over in the box, one on top, one on bottom. Now we have a perfect 25% chance, because there's 4 alleles into this combination, and we can see what our chances are of getting what. So it says here that anytime there's a dominant gene, which is a capital letter, that is going to show, that's going to be expressed. In this we can see that there's a capital letter, capital letter, capital letter. Those are all Ugudi. So those 75% chance that we're going to have Ugudi rabbits. But this right here shows that when the 2 recessives come together, that's when they get expressed. That's the only time they get expressed. So 25% chance that we're going to have solid black. And that's how you find out what you're going to get. So it's really important to know the genotype, check the locus, and then fill out the chart. Okay, so we got the whiteboard back out. We just wanted to talk about the genes, and we're going to go right through the series of A through C. But we'll start with B, because B, in the B series, that covers the base of the color. Like, is it black? Is it blue? Is it brown? Is it lilac? And all those colors are mutations, are dilutions of the same color. Like black is diluted to blue, or chocolate is diluted to lilac. I'll say chocolate, or I'll say brown. And the chocolate and lilac are recessive, and the black and blue are dominant genes. So that's what's going on in the B series. And you can find that out just by looking at your rabbit, just like with the eyes in the D series. And I know we're not really going in order, but these are the easiest things to pick out right away. You know, if it's a dark eye or a brown eye, that's a dominant, that's a capital D in the D series. If it's a blue or gray eye, that's a lowercase d, that's a recessive D gene. Going back to the A series, that's going to cover, is it agouti, or is it tan, or is it solid, or self? Self stands for a solid color. And then moving on to the C series, that's when we're talking about California rabbits or Himalayan rabbits, where it's the color pattern or the color amount. So based on if it's a chinchilla light or chinchilla dark gene, and then you also have Himalayan or albino gene. Albino is the most recessive gene out of the C series. And when you have a double lowercase c, it cancels every other gene in every other series out. And then moving on to we talked about the D series, the dense or dilute. That's when we talk about the eye, and that's when, that's how you get colors moving from one to the other. And then finally the E series, and this is just the basic information of what these sections of genes are doing in the genotype build makeup. The E series stands for extension. It's talking about how far up the shaft of the hair does the color extend. And that's when you have full extension, or you have steel. That's the most dominant of the E series. But that's just like the basics of how the fur changes. And when these genes are matching up, I know in the previous video we talked about the Punnett square, but we only put one series of genes in there. Depending on how many genes that's how many squares you would put in your Punnett square. You don't just have to have a 4-square box. Depending on what the genotype of your rabbit is, you can mark down how many genes you know of and how many different series. And you can figure that out just by going through the rabbit. And some recessive genes you'll have to breed in order to know, but especially if you have an albino rabbit. So down here at the bottom I wrote down some secondary genotypes. There's even more information because we didn't even get into broken rabbits or Dutch rabbits or the silvering gene or the wideband gene. That's how you get red rabbits, is the wideband gene. And the Vienna gene, we talked about how it matches up, and it's a recessive gene. It only shows when 2 Viennas match up. You can have a Vienna carrier or a Vienna marked rabbit, but it's not going to activate that blue-eyed white until the 2 little V's match up. Hope this video sheds some light on what's going on with the fur and why it's changing. It's really simple to harvest honey at home. You just need a couple tools. Now, if you have a strainer, if you have a honey extractor, there's 3 tools that I really recommend, and unfortunately they're pretty pricey. Beekeeping in general is pretty pricey, but this is a one-time thing. You buy once, you cry once, it's over. But a honey extractor, this thing's a couple $100. It fits deeps, mediums, and supers. That's why I like this one, because I beekeep with strictly deeps. I want everything the same size, and I'm still young enough where I'm strong and I can move these boxes around. One day I won't be able to, and we'll have to change everything. But for now, we do deeps, and that's why I like this extractor. I'll put a link down in the description below. I'm being surrounded by chickens, and so you guys are going to hear them. Sorry about that. So Sundays I like to let them out, and they can clean up the ticks and all the insects. And this chicken wants to be on YouTube. She just keeps hanging out. She won't be quiet. She has the whole yard to walk around right now. Oh, you're gonna flap your wings? But she has to sit right by the deck and make noise. This isn't the best one you can buy. The battery operated ones or the electric ones, they're really balanced and they're incredible, but you're talking $400 or $500. This is $199. When I bought it, I've had it for years. It's really durable. Nothing went wrong with it, but it was $130 when I bought it. It's such a good extractor. It keeps going up in price. And we'll put a link in the description. If anybody wants this stuff, we'll have all this stuff in the description so you can find it. All those links are free to use. They're at no extra cost, but if you do use those, you're helping our channel, because Amazon gives us a kickback every time you do that. So thanks for doing that. So this is a strainer. This is probably going to be the least expensive thing you'll buy. This will help you clean your honey. And we're going to strain our honey at least 2 times, sometimes 3 times, depending on what it looks like. You got your uncapping tools. This is a knife. I use this for years. And then this is our special uncapper. It's just a little bit faster. And lastly, you want some Tupperware. This one costs about $7. This one costs about $10. And we got these from Myers. And that's all you really need. You don't need to buy like a fancy honey catcher or anything like that, because basically you're just going to take the wax that's in this Tupperware, take it outside. The bees will clean up all the honey that's in the Tupperware. Take that honey and scrape it out. You can either use a solar melter, or we just take all the wax and we put it into a bucket, or we put it into a Tupperware until we have a lot of it, and then we melt it in our crock pot. If you'd like to see how we melt our wax, I'll put a card up in the corner so you can see that video. So the first thing you'll have to do is uncap your frames. And when you're uncapping them, you can use that knife, or you can use, there's lots of different tools, but what I find to be the easiest is the tool that I use. It's pretty expensive, but those, if you don't want to spend that much money, you can use those heated knives. Those work great. Once you get them uncapped, you're going to want to uncap both sides at the same time, put them in the honey extractor. The honey extractor that we purchased holds 2 deep frames, and usually how I extract them is I spin. It's a hand crank, so I'll crank it 15. I'll crank it as fast as I can go, and then let go of the handle for about 10 to 15 seconds. I'll do that 3 times. Then you have to pull the frames, turn them around, and extract the other side. It uses centrifugal force, so it's only going to shoot out to the walls on one side. So about 2 minutes for 2 frames for $200, which and this extractor I've had for I think 4 or 5 years now, and it's still holding up. It's pretty durable. So once you get all your frames done, I'm just going to put the frames back into the nuke or whatever you're holding the frames in. As I get a chance, I'm going to put them back out to the hives for fall feeding so they can pack those frames back out before they go into the winter time. So we're going to need to strain that honey again. So we're going to use one of our buckets, we're going to use the strainers, and we're going to put it under the honey spigot, open it up. We're going to have to watch it. We can't let it go full go the whole time because it'll overflow. So maybe close it down, open it back up. Then once we get all that strained into the bucket, we're going to have to strain it again. It's good to strain it at least twice. You probably won't have to strain it 3 times, but if you want to, go ahead. I'll get all the honey out of the bucket the best I can using a wooden spoon or even like a rubber spatula. We're going to need to install a spigot into that bucket because we want, or you can pour it back into the original honey extractor if you want. You can do it that way. So if you want to install a honey spigot into that bucket, it's 1 3/4 inch hole saw. We'll link that down in the description. We'll link everything down in the description that we used today. Once we strain it for the second time, we're ready to go. Then we can choose either a 2-pound bottle or a 1-pound bottle. That's really all we ever mess with, you know, and I think you should charge a premium price for your honey. So once you get everything bottled up, I'll include a link that you can put personalized stickers on your bottles. Makes it look really fancy. And once you're done, everything will clean up really well with warm water. It's surprising how much wax and everything can come off. And I usually pour it outside. I always wrap my uncapper in tin foil once I get done wiping it down with a washcloth. I don't know why. And I'll put everything away. I'll put my honey extractor back in its original box. I still have the box that I bought it in. I'll put it in there a special way with the handle sticking out the top.